that. So introducing my co-hosts, we have here today, Peter Fishman goes as Fish.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Catherine Pasquarello, who is our wonderful host here today.
Hello, everyone.
Well, excited, to kick us off. Like Martin mentioned, really great collaboration of these three organizations, and I'm hoping we can just dive right in. So, Catherine, let me turn it to you first. Let's sort of context set a little bit. Can you tell me more about Polaris? Can you tell me a little bit about sort of the company mission, and then broadly the data strategy, and then kind of how that ties back to the company mission?
Yeah, so that's definitely a loaded question. And I know for a fact that I could spend absolute hours just talking about Polaris in and of itself. But as Martin kind of alluded to at the very beginning, so Polaris itself is the nonprofit, specifically who manages the National Human Trafficking Hotline. We help survivors and victims of sex and labor trafficking, specifically by connecting them with local resources, as well as helping them find support to make informed decisions. Contrary to what people believe, labor trafficking is a thing, and labor trafficking is the least reported out of all trafficking, let alone the idea that in general, a lot of people don't report their trafficking because they aren't aware of what's happening. But we also receive information from the public with the hotline, and any information that we receive, we help facilitate that reporting to the authorities if that's needed as well. Additionally, Polaris itself provides extensive education. So with the education aspect of it, we can create an accurate understanding of what trafficking is, as well as root causes. So specifically, if there are myths out there or anything, we utilize our education platform to help dispel those myths so that way the information that's necessary and helpful can go out there, as opposed to just looking at the myths. Next, we do have something called Nanechka. So Nanechka is our web-based app. It is a platform which we're able to communicate with agriculture workers. So as mentioned, labor trafficking is one of the least reported trafficking instances. So being able to have Nanechka is very, very essential for it. Additionally, we're able to receive input from them in regards to their different conditions that they're experiencing, as well as also the recruitment that they had. But priority for that is really communicating with them to go ahead and notify them exactly what's happening. And even something as simple as, say that there's a hurricane coming their way and they need evacuation routes, any type of information, in addition to information about them needing their contracts or their IDs, etc. Now, lastly, about your question, Fish, in regards to data. Data is my absolute forte. Again, just with data, I could spend hours on that. But the big thing with data that we're trying to do is utilizing the data for something, as opposed to just data for data. How can we utilize that? So currently we're utilizing data to provide a holistic picture to policymakers, stakeholders, as well as use it in general to help trafficking. We utilize that data to work with other organizations, whether it's nonprofits or government organizations, as well as the media too, to go ahead and make sure that they're seeing the correct data. Then as well, we do some campaigns and advocacy about it. And then also the biggest goal is just that we're holding traffickers accountable. That's really what the biggest priority with our data is, utilizing that to hold them accountable in whichever ways possible that we can do.
Wonderful. I mean, this sounds extremely interesting, and especially the accountable part, right? To ultimately combat it effectively rather than just raising awareness. Love your story, Catherine. Absolutely. And data, you say, is your passion, is your expertise, and there is a lot of data within Polaris. So, in your particular case, I find it fascinating because you've been maybe not the first, but you're like the main kind of data citizen analyst in the organization, and you had to start from a blank sheet, get us a data product, get us insights. So, how did you go on about, selecting the right solution for your data challenge?
Yeah, so my boss was absolutely spectacular, and she realized that there was a massive data gap that needed to be found specifically with our open source data. So open source data being anything that you can find online just by yourself. So any of the attendees could go to any of the URLs that I've sent over and look at them. But realistically, across the board, not a lot of other organizations were looking at that data all that much in depth. And there was a wealth of that data. So if we could somehow or other get a handle on that data, it would obviously help us with what our plans were for it before, such as obviously creating change, holding them accountable, etc. So that was the whole reason why my boss brought me in. She was like, hey, this is the data, do something with it. So what I ended up doing was I literally did massive research. I think that I spoke with probably over 32 organizations. Specifically with organizations, I was looking for three separate things. So number one, I needed a data repository. We were utilizing currently just our regular basic desktop area for it. And I needed something that could actually house the data in something that A, created an automation, as well as B, was more cloud-based. Now, the issue though with cloud-based is that I needed something that also had the security mappings that was required due to the fact that obviously the open source data we're dealing with right now isn't confidential, but our Nanechka data as well as potentially hotline data, both of those things are sensitive information. So we needed to have that security there. So cloud, very difficult to try to do, but I needed some type of cloud database so that I could really dive into it, see what was there, as well as be able to have access to it anywhere. Secondly, I needed some type of analytical software, something that allowed me to do a deep dive into said data, but allowed me to actually see what the data had to tell me. It's one thing just to be like, okay, cool, let's go through this. It's another to let the data speak to you personally. And then, of course, lastly, for anybody that's not in our regular data circle, I needed the ability to do visualizations, something that was a little bit more digestible for anybody to look at. So say that I'm having a governor look at my data, I need him to understand exactly what's going on as opposed to them looking at it and being like, what is this supposed to tell me? So through those 32 organizations, some of them were all in one, had all three of those things. Certain ones were separate, such as, for example, Mozart and Astrato. Additionally, on top of that, I had to create things that was specifically necessary for us. So I had a whole list of things that when speaking with Astrato and Mozart, I was like, here's my list. I need you to have these things. Yes, please and thank you. Obviously, security being one of them, but something that was really important for us was also a mapping software too. So really being able to see exactly which organizations had specifically what was best for Polaris and what was best for what I was diving into the data thus far.
Yeah, let me just very quickly react to a couple of the things. Just you know, I think this idea of a boss coming to you and saying, do something with the data, that literally could like be one sentence just to define my career. And then I kind of liked in your introduction to yourself, you've always sort of had data as a forte. My wife describes myself as having data as a love language.
Yes.
So there's sort of this real commonality in sort of data people and just how it sort of connects into their world, and then kind of how they get assigned to do something with the data always starts with a really ambiguous ask, or even maybe a misdirected ask that you have to sort of shape and change. And you know, that leads me to my actual question, which is, you know, as you mentioned, there's a variety of ways to put together the entirety of the data stack. Why did you choose to bring, you know, Astrato together with Mozart, Astrato as your BI solution? Why bring these tools together? And, you know, tell us how you arrived there.
Outside of the aspect that there were two amazing CEOs that were willing to work with us.
Given.
Thank you.
No, to be honest, though, I guess the easiest way is to first dive into what both of you had in common. And then additionally, to kind of parse it out, there are so many different things that I initially loved that you both had, but then additionally, throughout being able to work with both your organizations separately as well as together, I've ended up developing even more of a love for what you both have to offer for us and how passionate you are about our cause as well. So in regards to both of you, to be honest, the big thing was that I wasn't a number. Unfortunately, when it comes to a lot of the larger BI organizations and stuff, you kind of just end up becoming a number. There's really not all that much support. And if there is support, it's like, hey, pay X amount of dollars for each hour of support. And you really only get maybe your setup area or maybe 5 or 10 hours otherwise. You can always purchase them later. But it's just kind of like throughout the time, if there's something that pops up a year from now, and I'm like, either A, something brand new happened on the platform and I need to know how to work this, or say B, I have this massive project that I need to do and I don't know exactly how I want to phrase it and put it out there. I need to be able to have that constant support. While I like to think of myself as very much so a self-starter, it's nice to have that backup there. So both on Astrato as well as Mozart pages, the support there was absolutely amazing. And since I've continued with you both as well, I mean, continually there is constant support, whether again, it's for an ad hoc project that I surprisingly ended up getting a month after I started with you, or if it's something more of just understanding the platforms a little bit more. Additionally, I needed something that was very easy to jump into. I, as you can imagine, already had all this data behind me and I had data that was continually stacking up. I need something that I could literally just jump into and didn't have to spend 6 months just trying to understand the basics. So Mozart and Astrato, both of them were very, very easy to learn, very, very easy to start. And I didn't have to wait for the analyst on both of your teams to set it up for me. No, it was I could get in there and immediately start doing stuff, of course, with the help of both of you as well. But it wasn't the aspect of let's set it up for you and then you can play around in it. I was able to have a good hand on it. Additionally, the two of you connected very easily. Definitely something that I want to show a little bit later is being able to see the connectors that Mozart has, which I'll explain in general with Mozart, but being able to have that connection between Astrato and Mozart, it kind of alleviated the idea of, well, should I go with an all-in-one or should I go with things that do separately items? Additionally, the two of you and your organizations were open to new ideas. I know that if all of a sudden I came to you and I was like, hey, I need X in order to do this project, you both would be like, well, don't know how we're going to do that, but give us a second and we'll try to figure it out. And that kind of ties into the whole, I'm not just another number. You're there, you're trying to increase the abilities of your platforms in general. And then, of course, the two things that I mentioned at the very beginning that I was looking for was something that was cloud-based, as well as something that had good security, both of which you both have, which was absolutely crucial for us. Now getting separately so that I can spoil each of you individually. So with Mozart, as mentioned, you do have multiple connectors. So that's absolutely fantastic due to the fact that any of our other platforms that we're using, so our Nanechka as well as Hotline, if we integrate them, at that point in time, we can connect them seamlessly. Additionally, it was literally like very, very low code, no code. So that startup as well as continual throughout the board, it was very, very easy to do. And it's easy to just create an automation. So as opposed to every single quarter, every single month, whenever I'm pulling spreadsheets in, it just A, creates an automation. So I don't even have to do that. But then B, it also just runs it through the coding each and every time. So I don't have to deal with it. Additionally, being able to have a backing of Snowflake is absolutely fantastic due to the fact that Snowflake is the leader when it comes to data repositories. And then lastly, just being able to have the different coding for the spreadsheets. Not that I mentioned it, but when you end up having data that you have probably about like 20,000 rows, if not into the millions of rows per each spreadsheet, you don't want to go into them individually. You definitely don't. And then Astrato, jumping on you for a little bit, is being able to have dynamic dashboards. So of course, I will show you guys the dashboards a little bit later, but being able to have that is able to actually show the picture between them. Additionally, being able to also have embedded links. So something that we are hoping for in the future is to actually put a link on our website of the map. And we have a bunch of dream brain ideas, as I put it. But something that's required for that is an embedded link. And being able to have that with Astrato is fantastic. Additionally, the very cool thing, which you'll be able to see, is that I was able to create my own page. So it wasn't just an Astrato page. No, it was Polaris's page. So it looks a little bit more seamless, especially when I'm coming to high government officials or anything. It looks a little bit more professional. And then lastly, with the security aspect of things, the ability to adjust who gets access to it is very, very important. So there is a self-service tool so that I can adjust it between the two of you. Being to have kind of like the data movement is super, super important, just due to the fact that from start to finish, it is absolutely set. I don't even have to really deal with it. Additionally, being able to have it just single person end-to-end analytics is obviously important since I'm the one that's doing it. And then of course, it's not entirely altruistic with it. So those are kind of the main information that's kind of my priorities between the two of you. But to be honest, there is so much more to do with Astrato and Mozart that I could never thank you guys as much as you've done thus far, as well as what we plan to do for the future.
Well, so thank you very much for the flowers. Genuinely appreciate it. And we're going to see the demo to back it up to the audience here in a minute. But personally, I find it fascinating. That was always the vision with Astrato and the modern data stack. You have one person who can connect end to end from raw data to insights, and you achieve that. So for me, this is a very, very important validation of what Mozart data is doing, what we're doing, what Snowflake's doing, and the interconnectivity of all those solutions. And one comment here, the support is not entirely altruistic. We learn equally as much from you and how you use our solutions. And so we take our feedback from our users, our customers seriously and deliver on that. And last but not least, working with people like yourself, working with Polaris is, that's the fun part of the entire job. That's why we're doing this. So with this, coming back to show us the bacon, as they sometimes say. So what did the result look like? How are you sharing your data insights with your business stakeholders? I mean, you've done a mega build up, and now we're very excited. Seeing is believing, as they say.
Yes, most definitely. Give me one moment just to go ahead and share my screen for you all. All right. So let me go ahead and hide this. Okay. So this, I wanted to kind of just be able to show what I was dealing with prior. So all this information is coming specifically from the databases that I'm pulling from. So for example, Department of Labor, et cetera. And when it came to us being able to look at the data, you can see here, we have different random items that are put in there. We have numbers that are there. We have even parentheses, capital letters, lowercase letters. I mean, we even have misspellings of things, and then especially these phone numbers, all of the ones are out of it. We have a general manager as an example instead of a manager. So this is an example of what I had to deal with to begin with. And then being able to utilize Mozart, this is the connectors that I was mentioning. So these are just some options. These are just our basic options that are on there, but I can search for any different one that I have. Then if there isn't something, I can, of course, have that added onto there as well. But I was able to really create more of an easy coding for it, something that was a little bit easier to understand than what this is, because there's no way that I could create analysis off of this. It was absolutely ridiculous. So this is currently what our dashboard looks like. So as mentioned, our dashboard is completely dynamic. So meaning that everything, when I roll over it, will completely pop up with different options, as well as additionally when I select things. So say, let's see, Fresh Harvest. You can get that from your grocery store, right? So when I click on Fresh Harvest, it will adjust everything. So it'll show me, cool, we're in California, we're in Arizona, as well as on here I have hours worked. Now the cool thing about here is, as mentioned, this is a Polaris page, as well as it'll go ahead and show me everything. So we have our date right here. This is something that looks a little bit more seamless than what some other organizations have. And then I can really play with all this. So these are items that obviously I have selected on here that was important to me. But we can select anything that you would like on here, and I can adjust the colors, you name it. Obviously, blue is Polaris blue. So that's why I did it. But being able to have it adjust to what I need it for was amazing. And especially down here, we have something that was really near and dear to my heart. So something that we ended up finding was our attorneys were potentially linked up with some of the shady individuals of the different employers. So something that happens is Department of Labor looks over these different organizations and they say either yes or no to them being able to get visas. So there's H-2A visas, which is for agriculture. So that's going to be for any farms. And then there's H-2B, which allows them to have any other type of thing. So think of cleaning, home care, health care, anything such as like butchering or anything like that. Those are all different ones of H-2B. So Department of Labor basically says yes or no, you can have these visas. Now, generally, most of them end up utilizing an attorney. If for some reason the Department of Labor realizes that, oh, they're doing something wrong, they can have violations, or if it's so egregious, they can have debarments, which means that you're cut off from being able to get any visas or whatever time frame that they select, which we'll get into debarments in just a second. But so something that we found is that some attorneys would have a grouping of employers where, let's say that there's 10 employers. Well, we've noticed that 8 of those employers are all based, so let's say Fresh Harvest, they're all based in that Arizona area, and all 8 of them have violations or have been debarred. And then we have 2 other employers that attorney also looks over, but for some reason they have absolutely no violations or debarments. Now you have to think to yourself, are they just really, really, really great employers, or is it maybe that they haven't been caught yet? So that's something that we dived into with being able to have these attorneys, is being able to see, okay, well, which side of the spectrum are we going? There's a high likelihood that obviously if you have 8 of the employers that are doing something incorrect, then chances are those other 2 just haven't been caught yet. So this allows us to really be able to see it. So Fresh Harvest, for example, this is just for the sake of it. Say that Fresh Harvest is one of those issues, and say that I found that their specific attorney was having issues, and I realized that Fresh Harvest was one of the 2 that didn't have issues. I could select here and do a full drill down of that employer to be able to see it. Additionally, when we go over to debarment, say that I'm looking more closer into the 8 different organizations that were debarred, and say that I realize that those 8 organizations, let's pretend that we didn't have California and Arizona on that, but let's say that I realize that all of these 8 organizations are in Florida. And I'm like, let's see if we can find a little bit more information in regards to those 8 organizations that are in Florida. So if I select on Florida in this debarment ones, it'll tell me, okay, these are the amount of violations that have just happened against them. Also that there's 8 organizations, and look at that. Even one of them has a lawsuit against them already. So at that point in time, it means that it's fully gone past the idea of just, hey, you did something wrong and you're debarred, but now there's a full lawsuit against them. And then of course, if you look at the monetary aspect of things, I mean, they owe an absolute astronomical amount just to their employees. So obviously they weren't paying them. And then of course the fees is the wonderful chunk that the government gets out of it for all of these things that they're doing incorrect. Being able to see down here as well, of seeing exactly these different organizations, I'm like, okay, well, I can look that it's Big River Honey is really the one that I want to dive a little bit deeper. And I can see specifically for them, this is how much they owe. They owe just over $12,000 for back wages. So at that point in time, I can really dive deeper into this. Now, H-2B debarment is very similar, just obviously the H-2B. But so self-service, say that someone that wasn't me, so I didn't have editing abilities, but say that one of the attendees, you happen to work with me, or say that it was someone like a governor or something, and they wanted to have access to this, and I gave them access to it. You remember, I mentioned the security aspect of things, and with the security aspect of things, I need to make sure that our data is very, very secured. So number one, I can adjust what tables they see. So these are just some of the tables that I have uploaded on there, but you aren't able to see the other tables that I have there because I've only decided that you can only see these 4. So you can click between these 4 and play around with it. Additionally, these are the only dimensions and measures that I've given you to play with. So say that one of them included, let's say, a phone number, because of course I get the phone numbers from the Department of Labor. Maybe I don't want the people to be able to see that for whatever the security reasons are. At that point in time, I can adjust it. So for the sake of this, let's say that I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the river honey or into the fresh harvest. Then I can go ahead and just do employer name, state, and let's go ahead and do wage offer so we can see exactly how much they're paying them. Oh, hold on 1 second. Let me clear this out. And let's do employer name, state, and wage offer again. Okay, so we see that it comes up with a bunch of different ones. Let's just select our top 3 and do that. Okay, it's narrowed it down a little bit more. You know what? I want to go a little bit deeper though. I want to see if there's any information that I can really gather from them. So let's do these. Okay, and select that. Okay, so now we have a decent amount right here, but I don't really like it in the table view. We can adjust it to multiple different items, and these are just some examples of them, but let's say heat map because everybody loves a heat map. Okay, perfect. Now I can be able to see it based upon what states they're in, exactly their wage offer, as well as, of course, what the specific employers are. Now, again, this self-service area, I can adjust what the end users have the ability to do with it. I can adjust the data as well as what their actual abilities are, or I can remove it in totality for them. Additionally, with this right back right here, we have the ability to say that we end up finding out, oh, you know what? One Dog Ventures isn't actually listed in Georgia. That's an incorrect location. I can go ahead with the write back tool and I can adjust it to be like, nope, Georgia, that One Dog Adventures is supposed to be in Florida. And I can write back directly to my data. Now, it will not affect my raw data. As any analyst will understand, you don't touch your raw data, but it will go ahead and adjust it so that that way I can have my spreadsheets on there still corrected at that point under the assumption of knowing I've had to adjust this because it was incorrect. Now, my favorite tool, which kind of goes into being able to have embedded links, is as I mentioned, we wanted to be able to create a map. So this is just a map currently of just our H2As. So specifically, it's coming up with the employers as well as the violations. So if I zoom in on this map, I can be able to see information that's on here for debarments as well as also for the actual employers. Now, I will say this is not totality of all of the employers out there. This is not totality of all the violations because A, people do a lot to get away with a lot of things. As you know, not everyone gets caught. But additionally, there is a lot of information that we don't know around the trafficking landscape due to the fact that not everything is reported. And of course, the government can't have everything. But being able to have this is super beneficial, especially being able to adjust it so that I could even scroll over one area and I can have it come up with an entire like state report card if I wanted to. Being able to take this exact thing and put it into our website was absolutely crucial because we want to work on that educational piece, as mentioned. And just in addition to that, we have our reporting tool, which this reporting tool allows me to actually take this and turn it into a report, whether I wanted all the dashboards in it or just this, so that way I could give the report to maybe a government official or someone that doesn't fully understand the data like we do. Being able to have that is super, super important because they need to be able to have a digestible aspect of being able to have that creation for the our data for it.
That's a lot for being asked, do stuff with the data.
Yes.
I think
do stuff with data, seriously.
that was awesome, right? Martin did mention something that I think really needs to be called out. This is one person's ability to explore the data end to end. And obviously it's somebody with a really strong, forte in data, but I think there's just something really beautiful about that ability to go end to end from raw data, which downstream doesn't get altered and touched, but the ability to go from raw data to these outputs and sort of even just the thinking behind it, as you were sort of walking us through it, you weren't just sort of saying, okay, this is the output. You were sort of walking us through the genesis of that output. And
Yes.
there's something really nice about that. And then just, I do a lot of sort of writing on LinkedIn about what real analytics is. And of course, there's the output. So typically, if you were to come to a webinar, you'd see, okay, here are the set of outputs that I've made with the tools that I use to make them. But what really analytics is that ability to double click into things. It's that ability to trace it back to the raw and then go back to the visualization and then fix and adjust. and there's some sort of data issue, like the general manager is the general manager, and this is our reality as practitioners. So it's really nice to see that in practice. I think we're sort of running a little bit low on time, so I'm hoping you could do, maybe just a little bit of a sneak peek. I guess the question is like, what's next for you? What data sources, enrichment, reports, analysis? This is the double click, which you sort of hinted at and teased at, but it's like, where's your mind go next here?
Yeah, so my team and I call it dream brain ideas. And as you both have understood, that's kind of the way that I put anything under it. There's a lot of things that I want. Obviously, our next step is to integrate more data sources. So we will be integrating Nonechka next, and then any additional data sources. And then additionally, just really pulling out our different products. So dream brain ideas. I have a lot of product ideas. So one of them will be, for example, integrating the map into the website, as well as additionally any other products that we end up finding that would be beneficial for any other government employees, as well as stakeholders in general. So, I mean, there's a lot that I intend to do next.
Wow, that's exciting. Again, kudos to you for what you have achieved, and also the passion. I think it's quite infectious. A lot of people here will definitely concur. And so maybe one of few questions from the audience, just to involve them a little bit. We have Joe Warrington, a close friend of mine, who asked, like, have you explored using a Sankey visualization to visualize the relationships between employers, attorneys in different dimensions?
No, but that sounds like a fantastic idea. I absolutely love that.
To her credit, like, Sankey was only released last week, so she might not have had time to explore it just yet, but that seems like a very quick next step. Another one on the data side, right? And then there's a comment here. It's been very, very eye-opening as presentation. Has been wondering how you might need to sort through data that is intentionally faked versus trustworthy data. Is that a thing when you're?
So in regards to the OSINT data that I'm receiving right now, none of that is going to be faked. It's coming straight from the government. So at that point in time, that isn't. That being said, our Nonechka data, that isn't going to be faked as well, due to the fact that a lot of the agriculture workers don't even understand their rights. They are coming from a completely different country, or even if they are here, they don't understand the working conditions. I think that America in totality has really created that idea that we need to work until we're literally dead. So when they have terrible working conditions, they don't realize that this isn't normal. They don't realize that, oh, well, if your boss is taking money off the top, or if now they're holding your IDs, or they're threatening deportation against you, they aren't aware that that isn't normal. So with the Nonechka, they're definitely not going to be faking that data, just because to them, it's such a small, minute ability of looking at that. As for the hotline data, we obviously haven't integrated the hotline data currently. Obviously, there's analysis that's done on the hotline with other teams. But as for the hotline data, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily faked data. Something that we do have a lot, though, with the hotline, which is kind of where we try to get the media as well as education on board accurately, is that we get a lot of false information, in the sense of they're not purposely trying to tell us false information, but the whole idea that when people started getting zip ties on their car, or there was a baby carrier car seat in the grocery store parking lot or something like that, people started freaking out about those items. And of course, we're calling into the hotline to give us information on them. But at the end of the day, there is absolutely no data that goes to follow that, to say that this is any type of a sign of trafficking, let alone the idea that realistically, that's not how trafficking happens. They aren't going to put a zip tie on your car, but something like that, we do get a lot of phone calls about, and it ends up absolutely clogging up our hotline, which ends up making it difficult for the survivors that need those resources and need that help So that's the only type of like false information that really we get, which I don't think that they're doing it in a malicious way. It's more of just misinformation.
Well, absolutely, and thank you for that comprehensive answer. And but I think it's a valid point, especially in the data world. If the data comes in as incorrect, you cannot just take it face value. It just travels through the pipeline. You see it in a dashboard, and you just believe it. You should always question it. And I think
Of
all the
course.
professionals here all do that. Perhaps back to almost running out of time, but just to raise a little bit more awareness around Polaris and also human trafficking. And I think a lot of people and everyone here probably knows what human trafficking is, but probably don't understand as deeply as you. So when it comes to myth busting, is there anything that you can share with the audience that will be a great takeaway?
Yeah, so to be honest, the easiest way to do it would be honestly for you to go onto the Polaris's website. We have a wonderful training that is our Human Trafficking 101 training. Actually, to be honest, we could probably send out an email right after the fact in regards to being able to have that training. But the training is absolutely fantastic to be able to have that. But realistically, which this is a very generalization, but if you see something on the media, chances are it's false. If you ever have any questions on if something is correct or not, if you go onto our website, we have an entire page devoted specifically to the myths that we have there. So any type of myths that start coming up on the media, if you go onto our website and just look up our myths area, it'll tell you if they're correct or not. There is a lot of false myths out there. In regards to trafficking, trafficking involves fraud, force, and coercion. And again, contrary to what people believe, trafficking also involves labor trafficking. It isn't necessarily having to cross international borders. It can literally happen in your own backyard. It isn't some random person that's abducting you from Target when you're shopping with your friends. Generally, trafficking happens by someone that you know, whether it's your significant others, families, acquaintances, etc. But definitely feel free to use our website. There's a wealth of information on there.
I want to cover before we go a question that both Martin and I tried to answer while you were doing a demo. But there were a few questions that Josh had around, who did all this in the organization? Who was this? Was this, a combination of your data engineering team, your data analyst team, your data science team? Did you pull in the 87 people on your team to do this? I mean, I'm being a little bit facetious. But maybe, you could talk, he asked more specifics, who's interacting and who's living in the Mozart interface, who's doing user management, and how do you do that? Who's building the dashboards and what, how does that kind of come to be? So maybe, obviously you were able to demo the end-to-end, but maybe you could talk about the specifics of those answers.
While you're looking at them, me, myself, and I. No, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. We have some other analyst teams within Polaris, specifically ones that do things more with our hotline data. But as for everything that you saw, that is 100% through me and the wonderful abilities of Astrato and Mozart, which just goes even more of a testament to back up what I was saying to begin with, in the sense that literally you have created it so that just one sole person can do all these different things. Obviously, our hope is to be able to have more funding and more grants to be able to bring more employees on to do more data research, because of course we are a nonprofit. My salary 100% comes from funding, but being able to have additional people would be amazing. But as of right now, my team only has myself. So thankfully we have the two of you that are more than happy to help, but anything from just the actual data, finding out what data we need, to putting it into Mozart. Thankfully, there's that automation for me there, so it takes that step away, let alone the ability of analytics, visualizations. Astrato makes it very pretty for me, but all those dashboards and everything are solely through me.
I will say that I come from a time back in my day, you did need a big, expensive team to put this all together. And I think this is kind of one of the shared visions of Astrato and Mozart, which is, we lived through a time where it took a very big data engineering organization and a big data analyst organization to make, instead of see what today is, is very possible for a singular person to do. I mean, back in the day, this took a number of different people with different specialized skills. And my personal passion was trying to bring the power of tools that I was using a decade ago. Now they've been modernized and updated, and I think that it's just so much better. And I mean, it's just beautiful when you see the demo. But my personal passion was that ability to see it in practice, and I think you embody it really amazingly, but also with such an important context as well. So this is very special for me to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I will say that the biggest thing is being able to know what you are looking for, being able to know what you're wanting, and that's just looking at your data. Even if it's just simply that you have your dream brain ideas, something being able to know based upon that data. And to be honest, I mean, the two of you, I came to you and I was like, hey, this is my idea. Can we make it happen? And you're like, sure, let's figure this out. So it's just being able to have that courage to go out there and go to both of you and be like, hi, we would like to sign our business up as well, or our nonprofit up as well. Please help us. We don't know what to do. And you can easily guide, and they can start literally within one day. It was absolutely fantastic.
And I would like to add here for the audience. So it's when we say help, it's guidance. She does it all herself. Catherine, you're such a passionate person to listen to, and I'm pretty sure we could do it for hours. Maybe next time we do a Lex Friedman podcast style for 5 hours and we talk. But time's coming to an end. Everybody, thank you very much for joining, for your questions, and for listening in, and showing your interest. I think Catherine really loves what she's doing, but also Polaris is working on a very, very important and great cause. Obviously, she's available, via email. I presume so. So if there's more questions, we'll be sending out more information on Polaris later on. If, of course, you want to hear more about Mozart Data or Astrato, you can reach out to us, or we'll be in contact. I would like to just conclude not just with a goodbye, but also Polaris project welcomes any kind of donations. Peter Fishman has shared the links, so I think every little bit counts for sure, for more data for good. So with this, we're on the dot. Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you everyone for attending, for your questions. Fish for co-moderating with us, and I wish you a great afternoon, great rest of the day, and keep smiling bright.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.